Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Fresh Investor Khalid Mahmoud, distinguished investors, members of civil society, fellow academics, ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be with you. I was teasing Ambassador Chowdhury that he has the job that I aspired to have. The best job I had was president of Kabul University. In my 14 years of teaching at Kabul University and Johns Hopkins in Berkeley, always makes me be with you, where ideas are not conspiracies, and exchange is productive and a learning process is mutual. I come here as the representative of the sovereign state of Afghanistan to seek a relation of equality in cooperation between two sovereign states. Our stability and our prosperity are linked and related to mutual respect for our sovereignties. The word strategy is one that I used to ban in discussions because it's so overused. But today, I think we are truly at a strategic moment. A moment where we can make history by overcoming the past. We had, on April 29 to May 2, an unprecedented democratic event in Afghanistan. It was the consultative Loy-Jirga of 3,200 Afghans, representing all the districts of the country in 27 strata, all elected. Over 30% of them were women, 60% were youth. They represented the Afghanistan of today, not the Afghanistan of yesterday. And among the 23 items that they laid for the future, 2 items are crucial. One, they instructed me and the government of Afghanistan to normalize relations with Pakistan. And second, they instructed us to find a political solution to the conflict in and around Afghanistan. In order to move forward, I don't want to dwell on the past, but differentiate between 2 types of strategies. One is bad strategy. Bad strategy is not absent of strategy. It's truly repeating the mistakes of the past and saying it's going to work in the future. Today, we are in a moment in Pakistan where bad strategy has been recognized and we're moving towards formulation of what is good strategy. Good strategy requires 3 things. 1, clarity of vision. Where do you want to get? Second, an analysis of the conditions of today, honestly, carefully, systematically. And 3, the roadmap. How do you get from here to there? So the first item that I want to start with is regional connectivity. You spoke of new narrative. A sovereign Afghanistan will be a partner of Pakistan in reduction of poverty, in overcoming institutional difficulties, in connecting to a wider set. While, Mr. Chowdhury, bilateralism is essential, it's also fundamental that we think Asia-wide. While there is global uncertainty, Asia is living in an incredible moment of time. Asia is having what the United States had in 1869.
In 1869, the Atlantic and the Pacific railways were joined and the Suez Canal was open. I see in the next 20 years the formation of an Asian continental economy, and more accurately, a Eurasian continental economy. For the first time, trade between Asian countries exceeds our trade with the rest of the world. So it's important to think, instead of just either multilateralism or bilateralism, to think of units of analysis that can allow us to connect. And in this regard, I take pride in turning our location into a major asset. When I became president of Afghanistan, everybody was saying Afghanistan was a landlocked country. The narrative that you spoke of, we turned it around and we said, we're not a landlocked country, we're a roundabout or a land bridge. And long before you knew it, last year, the Secretary General of the United Nations came to Afghanistan and he spent 1 week in Central Asia 5. He said, what have you done? Everybody is looking north, is looking south in Central Asia. I said, because we started looking north. Now Central Asian countries are our largest trading partner. Kazakhstan wheat competes in every single district of Afghanistan with local wheat and with Pakistani imported wheat. So it's this diversification, and I mentioned this not to highlight the missed opportunity, but to say how one creates opportunity. What is important to this is common vision in the leadership level, in relentless pursuit of detail, in common understanding and ground. All of this is done, Minister Qureshi, to be able to connect Central Asia to Pakistan and South Asia, India and Bangladesh beyond. So this northward look of us is enabling us to look back. In here, the past is of relevance. The trade of Bengal in South and East India with Europe is widely known. It's in every textbook. But my historical research reveals that what is Pakistan today, Lahore, particularly the Soba of Lahore, Kashmir and Delhi, exported more textiles to Central Asia and Russia than that combined to Europe. In other words, we were an economic region long before the concept of economic region was known. And our past was a past of flows, open systems, trading links, insurance. In 16th century, there were insurance linkages, and the Hawala system united us. So what does that mean for today's connectivity? I have 6 quick points in succession, so I'll make those. First, projects do not make connectivity. Systems do. And what brings a system? Agreement on the rules of the game. South Asia is the least connected region on earth. It's less connected than Africa because we have not yet had agreement on the rules of the game. And if Pakistan and Afghanistan take the lead, we can form this with Central Asia and the Caucasus. Because what is it that is lacking? Predictability. For flows to be regular, the system must allow for predictability. Predictable flows are key to allow us to move forward. My second point is the role of the state. What's the role of the governments in this? And I'm delighted with my meeting with the Prime Minister, both today and in Mecca, because his abiding concern with empowerment of the least privileged elements of Pakistan society is what I share in common. And his belief that connectivity is the future is the bond that we can, the foundation that we can build upon, as you mentioned. The first thing is we must have a shared spatial vision. We cannot treat ourselves as isolated countries. We must think of what? Because bilateral relationship will be important. But how much could Afghanistan and Pakistan trade with each other? Well, you just look at your imports from Uzbekistan, cotton. It goes through 6 countries, each container. Bringing the wider system to a win-win situation is critical to this, and this requires leadership level common understanding and common vision. The second element is commitment to political will. We must mobilize political will together, because there are going to be a lot of naysayers. Machiavelli long ago observed, reform has no constituency, the present has very strong defenders. Because if you want to open up, there are going to be a lot of hurt voices in the short term, but a lot of beneficiaries in the medium term. The third is a programmatic approach. We cannot go project by project. With enormous respect, because this is what General Bajwa says, so I quote him. Why did Karachi or Gwadar did not become Dubai? The infrastructure was built, but the systems to make it Dubai or Singapore were not brought. So we need to be having a programmatic approach and not just saying we are building the infrastructure and they're going to come. We need to be able to connect it. And the fourth element, which I'm delighted because we've both agreed that the Torkham custom will become a 24-hour facility. We have to align systems and processes. If our goods are delayed 20 to 40 days in Karachi, which sane Afghan trader would come through Karachi? It's not the Afghan trader that doesn't want to come to Karachi. It's the problems of governance at the port of Karachi that repelled them. Because today, Batumi in Georgia, Baku in Azerbaijan, now the latest Jaihan, in Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan are open to us, as is Chabar. So in this system, one must benchmark and compete by services. That is essential because it allows us internal drivers of competition to move forward. A question that a lot of you will have in mind, so let me tackle it first. Why would you commit your energy security or your transport security to a country with which you have had a difficult past? And my answer is fivefold. 1, political risks need to be differentiated. There are political risk guarantees. In my old job at the World Bank, I used to prepare political risk guarantees. Second, risk of disruption, because we've experienced these sorts of things. I want to propose an escrow account managed by a third party that in case there is disruption because of political decisions, there will be a penalty. And the penalty would be so heavy that nobody would dare repeat it. You know, when we link tens of thousands of megawatts of power or billions of cubic meters of gas, we have to think systems. The third is financial risks. Financial risks require both insurance and sovereign guarantees. By bringing people together, we can deal with this phenomenon. The fourth are environmental and social risks. And on environment, let me make a point. I think what steel and coal did for Europe, environment would do for Central and South Asia. Your floods, our earthquakes, our cycle of vicious floods requires environmental coordination. These are not things that does environment. Does God differentiate between borders, political borders, or is it natural events that come? The most important thing here, and this connects to our discussion this morning, is security risks. And because of this, the narrative that I'm offering to the people of Pakistan is that you become our partners in peace, this rest of the agenda will fall in place. And we are not suing for peace. It needs to be very clear. I'll come back to those remarks. Our Loy Jirga has mandated peace not because Taliban are powerful. The security dynamics is moving forward. Yesterday we took another district road. And there's no shortage of Afghan volunteers for our security forces. I had to retire around 2,000 colonels and generals, and there wasn't a murmur. Our culture is of civilian leadership. Since 1747, only one general has been in charge of Afghanistan. All the leaders have been civilian. So there's a culture, all political cultures have differentiations. I wanted to address this so that the realism of the agenda that I'm proposing becomes subject of discussion. What I think I'm proposing is a realistic agenda, not just an idealistic agenda, because the problem with a lot of vision that is not grounded in risk analysis and concrete proposals, then it becomes insane. It's a pipe dream. The agenda of connectivity is not a pipe dream. And what could be some of the early wins before I go to others? TAPI, the Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, Pakistan, India pipeline is moving. Financing has been secured. In a couple of months, work in Afghanistan is going to begin. This is a breakthrough project. It's proof of concept. We've synchronized energy from Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, and we are synchronizing it now with Kyrgyzstan and Kazakhstan. CASA was talking about less than 1,000 megawatts. The potential, and I thank Dr. Qayoumi, our distinguished finance minister, who has had this vision for me. Potentially, we are talking about 50,000 megawatts of power from Central Asia to South Asia. And what is most impressive, a private sector firm is right now discussing with Turkmenistan, Afghanistan, and Pakistan, putting $1.7 billion of its own money to transmit between 1 to 2,000 megawatts of power from Turkmenistan via Herat to Kandahar to Pakistan. The port of Gwadar and Karachi. These can become the ports of choice for Central Asia 5. I repeat, both Gwadar and Karachi can become the ports of choice for Central Asia 5. You don't need to wait for the system of railways. The existing system of highways is sufficient to underwrite this, but the other is railways. We missed the age of railways. Our fiber optic system is moving enormously. We have just secured $400 million of Afghan private sector commitment to the fiber optics. In other words, the vision we are offering is not of 2 decades, it's of years. What it takes is political will and the organizational capacity to being able to bring this. But this brings me to my fourth point. Infrastructure needs to be approached differently. In my old job, particularly 1991 to 96, I worked on infrastructure both in South Asia and in East Asia simultaneously, and I saw the differences. The first thing we need from a connectivity perspective is what is critical infrastructure. I give you a small example of what we did with Turkmenistan. We had a single port, dry port, to Central Asia, the port of Hayratan with Uzbekistan. Now we have two with Turkmenistan. One is in Herat, called Torgundi. The other is in the province of Faryab, called Aqina. What it took was persuasion of 50 to 60 miles of railway to link the existing system to us. That has connected us all the way to the Lapis Lazuli corridor, all the way to the Caucasus and beyond to Europe. It's not each time 2,000 or 1,000. It's those critical missing pieces. And second is, what serves you? We need to define this in terms of an agenda of future growth and be able to have a logic for it. Second is prioritizing. If we take these two proposals from a regional perspective, Minister Qureshi, Afghanistan, Pakistan will be the beneficiaries, because the critical gaps are in our territory, and so would be the linkages. Dr. Qayyumi again has a word saying 1 + 1 is 2, but 1, 1, 1 is 111. In other words, geometric progression is possible in this agenda, and it can be moved forward. And this requires agreement of systems. There's not a single road between us that is aligned. We each use different standards. Railway gauges are not aligned. Power, we are just synchronizing, so it's extremely important. But the second part of this, South Asia, in my comparative experience, builds the most expensive infrastructure with the least utilization because of lack of connectivity. Design of these, building of these, and this is a sector that generates jobs. Mining generates wealth, but infrastructure generates jobs. And again, to program and project management capacity. We can work together, and I was delighted to see so many young men and women today, the future diplomats of Pakistan. Diplomacy is going to be economic diplomacy. Connectivity is strategy. It's not going to be about reporting intrigues in the elites. It's going to be creating commonwealth in the true sense of the word. So knowledge of each other is extremely important in this, knowing how we complement each other. This is not an agenda of competition, it's an agenda of cooperation. So then where does the money come from? The first part of the money will come from the private sector. If we put the right systems and process in place, we'll be able to mobilize the money. My initial estimation, that might be wrong, but we need detailed work. This agenda will cost $30 to $40 billion. But it's mobilizable. Grants and loans are a second part. Regional funds are a third source. Bonds and joint budgetary commitments. And this goes back to another form of insurance. When you have so many financiers that you need to bring together, they need to know that there is return to money. The reason I'm interested in the private sector is that the private sector will not risk its money if there's political disruption. So it's another form of insurance for the countries that we commit our future together. What I propose to the distinguished Prime Minister is a task force at the level of leadership, a second at the ministerial level, and a third at the technical level. And I'm very pleased to share with you that the European Union already is very seriously interested in this agenda. The leadership of C5, Caucasus, particularly President of Azerbaijan, Russia, China, others. We're working together. Bottom line, the coalition for peace will be much larger than the coalition for war. And in terms, so the last thing, I will make some remarks on peace because it's there. What is our vision of ourselves? How are we approaching peace? The first thing, we're an Islamic republic. We're not just a republic, we're an Islamic republic. Our constitution, in comparative perspective, is the most Islamic that has been judged. The key word is a republic in citizen. Because of this, the presidential election of 28 September 2019 is a must. The other day, a colleague of mine, former colleague of mine, proposed and said, we postpone the election, let President Ghani govern for another 10 years. I don't need it. I don't accept a mandate from the elite. My mandate comes from the people of Afghanistan. They can throw me any day they wish, and I'd be honored. But an elite mandate is undermining of democracy and the rights of the people. Nobody can give you a mandate except the people of Afghanistan. Sovereignty is vested in people's freedom. And I'll just give you an illustration. In the parliamentary elections, literally rockets were raining, but our people stood in line. And when we held the Loy Jirga, you know what was the most contentious issue? The number of delegates that wanted to participate. They were competing fiercely. The people of Afghanistan want a center to function. The view of the capital is of a moral authority. It's not of a physical source of coercion. So this is the notion of the republic is central in rights of the people. The second thing we want to be is a roundabout, which I've explained. The late Toynbee, for the first time, coined this in relationship to Afghanistan past. He differentiated between two concepts, a cul-de-sac where things come and get stuck, and a roundabout where flows take place. For 2,500 years, till the 19th century, we were a roundabout. If you look at India today, the subcontinent, plains, coasts, and others, but the main route during ancient times was overland. And Afghanistan is the shortest way of connecting in this area. So we have been gates, and our culture has been one of free flows. Look at Data Ganjbash. His actual name is Hujairi, and he's from Ghazni, and I still read him in Dari. We want to be a roundabout so we can connect. Every single of our languages is a source of pride and connection to us. Dari we share with Iran and Tajikistan. Pashto we share with Pakistan, as well as Baluchi. Uzbeki and Turkmeni we share with Central Asia. A roundabout is to be a place of coming together. The third part is we want to be a platform for regional and global cooperation. Why is that? Because the threat of terrorism, drugs, and radicalism need to be dealt with. This triple nasty formation needs to be tamed, and it cannot be tamed without an alternative. As Minister Qureshi mentioned, we've all suffered from this. A month ago, we carried an operation in one of our provinces. We We destroyed 54 laboratories. But was not the damage inflicted upon them, the criminal organizations, was $1 billion. But it's not heroin. What was at issue was that they were producing crystal, methamphetamine. Well, for years, Afghans were in denial, saying, things are produced here, we are not going to get addicted. Well, we have news. We have at least 2.5 million addicts. So it requires a comprehensive way of dealing with this. Monopoly of force has to be vested in the state, in this vision. Because without that, and again, the program that you've undertaken in the current government to bring madrasas and others, where I've studied, is. And lastly, our citizens should enjoy physical, human, social, and economic security. It's a citizen-focused version. Where the Taliban fit? Through a political inclusion strategy. We acknowledge them to be part of our society. And the mandate of the Loya Jirga is to find a political process for ending the violence. I don't want to get into the detail, but we've had constructive discussions, the heart of which has been that two sovereign states are talking about cooperation. Afghanistan would never be a colony. We've never accepted to be a colony. It's not in our nature. But, we have a proverb. It says, you cannot take an Afghan to heaven by coercion, but you can take him to hell by persuasion. That is the balance sheet. The strategy of persuasion, and I hope I've used the word strategy properly, allows us to develop a good strategy. In this part, Pakistan is an important role in that there are strong interdependencies between Taliban and Pakistan. We need to recognize this and arrive at programmatic approaches to move from conflict to cooperation. You mentioned, as the Prime Minister had mentioned, that the road would be bumpy. All strategic decisions are bumpy. That's inherent in the nature of strategy in a time of uncertainty. We have to take uncertainty for granted, because the world of Cold War, where there were certain certainties and certain assumptions, that world is gone. In this world, it's going to require agility, capacity to devise joint solutions and to implement them. We will not fault each other, Minister Qureshi, if we meet bumps. Where the test will come is our common collective will to overcome them. And once we have made a decision regarding destination, not to look back, but only forward. Thank you.